Hey everybody, welcome to Workshop 3. It's not about the food. I am so excited to be back again with you this week. So in our Think section, we will continue to discuss the when decision point of our mindful eating cycle. Our topic is I'm not hungry, what now? And then our nourish topic is fluids and our live topic is lay your foundation. So last week you learned to pause whenever you wanted to eat and ask yourself, am I hungry? You also learned to tell the difference between hunger and maybe other urges to eat. So how many of you are getting into the habit of asking yourself, am I hungry, when you feel like eating? How many of you are able to tell when you're hungry? And then what about if you could tell you weren't hungry, but you wanted to eat or ate anyway? So remember, we've only had 2 workshops. This is just the 3rd. So we're only a quarter of the way through here. So the goal at this point is to become aware of your urges to eat and then begin to recognize whether those urges are coming from true hunger or not. If you aren't hungry, then it's not about the food. But don't expect yourself to automatically recognize that you aren't hungry and to be able to consistently resist eating. That just really is not realistic at this point. So as we continue on our journey around the mindful eating cycle, we are at the decision point, when? When do I eat? And this is the 2nd session of 3 on that when decision point. So as you recall, the mindful eating cycle consists of 6 decision points. So the mindful eating cycle isn't complicated, but it might not be a little bit easy to remember either. So let me help you come up with a way that you might be able to remember these decision points to make it maybe a little easier if need be. So if you're somewhere where you can stand up, go ahead and do so. And I want you to picture a clock. You've got it in your mind to picture a clock. Now I want you to picture yourself as that clock. Now raise your right hand straight up to 12 o'clock. This is why. Why do I eat? Now take your hand to 2 o'clock. This is when do I want to eat? 4 o'clock. What do I eat? And now 6 o'clock, how do I eat? 8 o'clock, how much do I eat? 10 o'clock, where do I invest my energy? So I think if you do this with me, you'll remember it easier. So let's do it again real quick. 12 o'clock, why do I eat? 2 o'clock, when do I eat? 4 o'clock, what do I eat? 6 o'clock, how do I eat? 8 o'clock, how much do I eat? And 10 o'clock, where do I invest my energy? Now, real quick, back up to the top without saying the times. We've got why, when, what, how much, and where. All right, awesome. Thank you for doing this with me. And anytime you happen to feel like you need to do that, remember your clock. So feel free to sit down if you were standing up, or stay standing up, because standing up actually increases your energy. So sometimes when I run my workshops, I might stand when I'm talking to you so that I can stay a little more energetic. So try it yourself. If you start to feel sleepy or distracted or something like that, just stand up. All right, so last week we focused on the first part of this decision point, and you learned to pause whenever you wanted to eat and to ask yourself, am I hungry? But it turns out that that question is not as simple as it might seem. It's an obvious question now that we've learned about the instinctive cycle and how each of us was born with the instinctive ability to manage our food using hunger and fullness cues, but it's not necessarily so simple. So I wonder if any of you have noticed that you're able to tell if you're hungry, but maybe you're having more difficulty stopping eating when you're full. Or how many of you have asked, am I hungry? And now recognize, no, I'm not hungry at all. and you're just not really quite sure what to do with that information. Now that we're a little more familiar and remember the physical symptoms of hunger and we can recognize them more easily, the no, I'm not hungry part is kind of what gets us a little tripped up. So now, please notice that I am not saying or suggesting that if you're not hungry, you just don't eat. Because honestly, that would be restrictive and really no different from a diet. So please don't turn this program into another diet, because you know how that'll turn out. So this is kind of where we're going to spend our time today, right? So let's talk about this. When you've determined that a desire to eat is not true hunger, what are your options? Listen, it's very important that you realize you have options. Mindfulness is very unlike dieting in that it is not about do this, don't do that, eat this, don't eat that. It's about understanding what's happening in the moment, realizing you have choices, and then deciding what you're going to do based on the best answer for you in that particular moment. So let's talk about what options you might have when you're not hungry, but you feel like eating. So what are some of them? Well, you can eat anyway. Yes, this is an option. Even people who eat instinctively sometimes eat when they're not hungry. Remember, you're in charge. If eating isn't an option, then you're not in charge and you're in a restrictive eating cycle trying to be in control, right? Well, you can also redirect your attention. So in other words, you could find something else to do until the urge to eat passes, or until true hunger comes. Or you can meet your true needs, which means you can kind of figure out why you want to eat and do something to meet that need instead that's giving you that urge. So we're going to use a strategy tonight called FEAST, which stands quickly, and we'll go over this again, but it stands for focus, explore, accept, strategize, and take action. But again, a little bit more on that later. The bottom line is you are in charge. So as long as you're considering the advantage and the disadvantages, then the choice is really up to you. So let's explore this just a little bit more. And we're going to do this by weighing the pros and cons, the advantages and disadvantages of these three options. This is really a simple but a kind of an important concept, because dieting has taught us to think in like black and white, good or bad, all or nothing. And I really want you to understand that now that you've chosen to eat anyway, like over and over and over again in the past, this is an option right here that you have done a bazillion times, right? Not because you're weak or stupid or bad or anything like that, but because there are some advantages to eating anyway. We have to accept that there are. So there are disadvantages too, obviously. But let's think through this process a little bit. So if your first option is to eat anyway, a choice many of us have made lots of times, let's go through some of these advantages and disadvantages of option one, the eat anyway. Well, it's easy, right? It's easy because we've done it a gazillion times before, right? It takes zero effort. We don't even have to think about it because it's like an autopilot response. It might provide temporary pleasure. So maybe you eat chocolate to reward yourself, or you eat with friends to celebrate a special occasion. It might provide a temporary distraction, like avoiding doing a project or postponing a difficult conversation or distracting yourself from a painful emotion. But the biggest issue with this option here is that what it is doing is simply providing temporary distraction or pleasure. It's the fact that it's temporary that really continues to create a challenge for us here. And then eating anyway is easy. And it gives us that little distraction for a little while, right? So what are some disadvantages? Well, how about discomfort? So discomfort of eating anyway when you're not hungry is that you might feel stuffed or lethargic. So when you eat food, obviously, that your body didn't tell you to eat, it's got no choice but to store it. So over time, this option, when chosen frequently, has a tendency to lead to weight gain. The occasional decision to eat anyway really isn't the problem. Lots of people who eat instinctively sometimes eat when they're not hungry. So doing it in and of itself isn't the problem. It's the pattern. It's when we choose that option repeatedly over time that we kind of get ourselves into trouble. Eating anyway can lead to regret. So, and I'm going to mention this several different times, but notice I'm not using the word guilt. Regret is different from guilt. There is zero need to feel guilty if you made a conscious decision to eat anyway. You didn't do anything wrong, you just made a choice. See, guilt keeps us focused in the past. It keeps us focused on the choice we made back then that we have no control over anymore. Regret keeps us focused on this present moment. Regret is feeling physically uncomfortable. It's saying, whoa, I regret that. I really wish I hadn't done that. What will I do differently in the future? Regret's focused on how I feel right now with the intention of maybe doing it differently in the future if I choose to. Guilt leaves us trapped in repeating the same old pattern. Remember the eat, repent, repeat cycle? We repeat the cycle over and over again because we get trapped by guilt, and guilt fuels your overeating cycle. For many of us, the freedom of being able to say, no, I just chose to eat. It's just a decision I made. It's no big deal, is really very freeing when it is not coupled with a bunch of guilt. So this is not about beating ourselves up anymore. It's about being in charge, finally. So the final disadvantage, and probably the most important point that we'll make, is always choosing to eat anyway and never truly finding out what's driving that eating cycle leaves your real needs unmet. And we don't really wind up taking care of ourselves in the best way possible. We don't go to bed when we're tired. We don't get that glass of water when we're thirsty. We don't treat that heartburn. We don't have that difficult conversation with our boss or with our spouse. And then those continued unmet needs, or if you will, triggers, continue to drive your overeating cycle because they continue to be unmet. That fatigue is still there, the thirst is still there, the angst is still there, the stress is still there. So we really continue then to want to eat over and over again. And then we continue in our overeating cycle. So what's another option? Well, another option is to redirect your attention. So redirecting your attention is about noticing that you're not hungry right now. You will be, you're just not hungry at the moment. So you find something to distract yourself for a while, maybe until hunger naturally actually comes. This is not about denying yourself. It's about noticing you're not hungry and then choosing something else to do until you notice your own physical symptoms of hunger have come up. So let's go through here some of these advantages and disadvantages of redirecting your attention. Let's start with the advantages. So, well, the urge to eat will likely pass, first and foremost. So do you ever notice that? You see the donut in the break room, you're not really hungry, but for whatever reason you might see that you get involved in something else. And the next thing you know, you've forgotten about that donut or whatever it is. You might be able to make a more productive use of your time doing something besides eating. Like how much time, energy, and effort do you spend eating when you're not hungry? Thinking about eating when you're not hungry, eating and preparing food, getting food, buying food, hiding evidence, feeling bad afterwards when you're not even hungry. So one of the huge advantages of redirecting your attention when you're not hungry is you're likely to be much more productive because you can use all that time for something else. Now, redirecting your attention might reduce your urge to overeat. It kind of disrupts your overeating cycle. When we're triggered to eat by something besides hunger and instead we find something else to do, our brain just kind of lets go of that trigger and we lose that urge. This option is especially useful for environmental triggers and boredom. If you see food or a commercial or someone else eating, you might want to eat immediately. That's an environmental trigger. That'll pass really quickly if you can find something else to do. Just like that, boredom is simply the need for something to do. If you're bored, eating is just one option. There's probably 101 other things you could do to deal with boredom. So of course, if you're eating because you're bored, you're going to get bored again as soon as you're done eating, right? Because now it's over. And now what? You're still bored. So then you have to eat again because you were bored. Whereas if you find something else to do, it might take up enough time that a while later you may actually notice you are hungry. And then that's the perfect time to eat. It causes you to postpone eating until you're actually hungry. Then when it's time to eat because you're hungry, it will really truly be more satisfying and your food will taste way better. And lastly, sometimes you might accidentally meet your true needs. So if you're bored, for example, and you found something else to do by redirecting your attention or distracting yourself, then you've actually met your real need, which was dealing with your boredom. Or maybe your need at the moment is for connection, and you distract yourself by calling a friend or moving into another room at a party and having a conversation. See, in that case, we're meeting our need for connection. Sometimes we do it accidentally, but you know it was what we needed, because when you do it afterwards, you feel so much better. So you know it was really what your need was. So what are the disadvantages to this option? Obviously, there are some disadvantages, because if there weren't, you'd be doing this all the time. So I'm sure you've heard of the idea of distracting yourself instead of eating. This is certainly not a new idea, but we don't do it all the time. And why not? Well, really the main reason is that it takes some thought and effort. And sometimes it requires some preparation, requires us to get out of our old rut and do something else. It's temporary, which is fine. If there was an environmental trigger, that'll pass in a short time anyway. But the big one here is redirecting may not, again, meet your true needs. If you always redirect your attention and never figure out what triggers the urge to eat and then meet that need instead, then you'll still have those needs hanging out there, acting like a vacuum that causes you to continue to feel like eating. So if you always choose this option, and it's a good option, I'm not going to say that it's not, but if it's the only one you ever choose, then you really won't start to understand what your true underlying needs are. And eventually that desire to overeat will come back again and again. So let's take a minute here. I want to do a quick activity with you and see if we can begin to build a redirection activity list. So in your workbook, in journal, if you have it, I don't know, I think somewhere around page 54 or something, you're going to find a place where you can jot down some things that you can do besides eat. And if you don't have your journal with you, no biggie. Just, maybe if you have a sheet of paper next to you or something, you can use that and make 2 columns. And on one column, title it Simple and Quick. And then on the other column, title it Complex, Time Consuming. You see that here. And under the Simple Quick, I want you to come up with a list of things that you can do immediately. Things that don't take a lot of time or preparation. You can just kind of do them without a lot of thought. Okay? But then I also want you to come up with a list of things that take a longer time or are maybe more complicated. This list is going to be really helpful when you have a long evening ahead of you, or a Saturday, or other times where it seems like that urge to eat just keeps coming back over and over again. And I'd also kind of like to mention that it's a great idea to consider what activities you can come up with for different locations. Your list at work might look different than the list you'd use at home or at a friend's or at a party. So consider the different places you spend time and think of the redirection activities you could do there. If you need more ideas or you're having difficulty coming up with some, take a look at the list of 101 things to do besides eat in your journal for some more ideas. Now, I want you, hopefully you jotted some down, and if you didn't, you go back and do it later and then either re-listen to this or pay attention to what I'm getting ready to tell you for a little homework. Now, I want you to look at the things you put on your list. And I want you to place a 1 next to any activity you wrote down that you really want to do. Like, this sounds great to you, and honestly, if you have the time to do it right now, you would. Now, if it's something you'd like to do, but for some reason you just haven't been doing it, then put a 2 by it. And then if it's a neutral activity like cleaning out your kitchen drawer or something like that, put a 3 by it. Listen, if it's not at least a 3 or a little bit appealing to you, I want you to cross it off your list right now. Cross off any activities that aren't at least tolerable. Because think about this. If your choice is between eating chocolate chip cookies or cleaning the bathroom, eating a bag of chips or dusting your blinds, eating some pizza or cleaning the garage, which are you going to choose? Well, you're going to choose eating every single time. So you want things on your list that have at least some appeal to them, or you won't want to do them. And then you're defeating the purpose, right? So strive to at least have plenty of 1s, some 2s, and fewer 3s. Because if your choice is between eating or doing something you dread, what would you be most likely to choose? So one of your assignments this week, or maybe for a few minutes after this call, is to build a big list. And let's talk about what might make great redirection activities. While you're making this list, I just want you to brainstorm. Just like literally dump anything out of your head onto this paper that you can think of that might be a redirection activity. You really want to make a list of distraction activities before you actually need them. Have them in place now. Choose activities that you enjoy or things that are at least neutral and not unpleasant. Like start a new hobby maybe, or rekindle an old one. Look for activities that revitalize you or that nurture you. Typically, these are activities that might relax you or tap into your creative side, like maybe painting or drawing or building or sewing or something like that. Then maybe consider choosing activities that are eating incompatible. So what do I mean by this? Well, choose activities that use your hands, like scrapbooking or cross-stitch, woodworking, playing the piano. These are activities that sort of make eating not really very possible. Brushing your dog. Okay, maybe even consider setting up some boundaries for yourself if you think this would be helpful. It's completely up to you, but sometimes we think, ugh, I really want to eat, but then you don't do anything else to distract yourself, and so you keep thinking about eating. So maybe you say to yourself, I am going to try to do something else for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Maybe you work your way up to 15 minutes. And if at the end of that time you realize you're still not hungry, but you still want to eat, just give yourself permission to eat. Even if you've only been doing this thing for 5 minutes before you go ahead and eat, at least you're giving it a try. And give it a try every time. Sometimes it might work and sometimes it might not. And you might discover over time that actually the urge to eat does go away if you find something fun to do. And maybe you realize that waiting 5 to 10 minutes didn't kill you. And then over time, you might feel like you're able to postpone eating or decide not to eat without having to use this willpower in order to do so. Another thing you can do, and this is pretty helpful, is to spend some time building a redirection kit. This is kind of about pulling together all the things you could do so they're right at your fingertips, so it doesn't take a lot of effort. Be prepared with things to do that, that go along with things on your list. Like, you might want to gather books or cards, magazines, stationery, Sudoku games, crossword puzzles, tools, supplies, whatever. So that when you decide to select one of your redirection activities, you don't then have to go gather the materials to be able to do it. Maybe you establish a food-free zone that's free of environmental triggers at home and at work. And then you can escape there whenever you want to distract yourself. Don't eat in this area. Now, water, coffee, tea, drinks like that, those are fine. You could also consider creating, like, quote, some rules for yourself if they help you set limits. Now, I'm not going to tell you to set rules, but if it helps you to set parameters, then you could consider some. For example, I don't eat at my desk, ever. Maybe that's something you decide to put in place. Or deciding that you'll go to one of your food-free zones and maybe even do one of your distraction activities for like 10 minutes. And then ask yourself how you feel before you eat. Only create these kind of rules and boundaries if they help you. But please don't create them if they start to cause you to feel like you have to resist them, because it's not helping at that point. In your workbook is a sheet that says 101 things to do besides eat. So you can spend a few minutes and circle the ones that appeal to you. See if any of those trigger other ideas. This is a great way to get your list going if you're having trouble thinking of other activities. It might, get your mind thinking. So now if you always choose to distract yourself and never address the underlying trigger, it will continue to cause an urge to eat, which brings us to our third option, which is meet your true needs. So we can easily identify the advantages and disadvantages of this option. Remember, when a craving doesn't come from hunger, eating will never satisfy it. And when you don't meet your true needs, those unmet needs will drive your overeating cycle. So let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of meeting your true needs. So the advantages first. Obviously, the desire to eat is going to decrease whenever you take care of whatever that trigger is. When you discover what triggered the urge to eat and address that issue, eventually that trigger will decrease significantly and even go away. So when food is no longer used to meet needs, you may be able to maintain your natural weight or attain your natural weight more effortlessly without all the restrictive dieting and then subsequent overeating that's gotten you to this point. When true needs are recognized and met, you really will move more easily and quickly toward optimal health. This is certainly by far the most satisfying option and has hands down the best long-term results. And then maybe the true advantage to this one is that we're taking care of ourselves. See, this process may also help you learn how to deal with other issues in your life too. You get to start living a big life that involves way more than just food. Your whole life isn't going to be about food anymore. Maybe you discover you like to walk or run. Maybe you meet some new friends at the gym. Maybe you develop new hobbies or bring back those that you used to enjoy. Maybe you learn how to take care of yourself in ways that aren't just limited to eating or something. Maybe you learn to ask for that raise, right? To ask for things that you need at home. So what could the disadvantages be? Well, clearly the disadvantage to this is it is the most challenging, but also the most rewarding. It might be the most challenging because maybe we've developed deep, long-standing habits, and without a doubt, habits are very hard to break out of. Remember TFAR? We've gotten into thought patterns that lead to feelings that ultimately result in actions and results that we've repeated so many times, ultimately creating beliefs that we've had about ourselves or about what works or what doesn't work or about what I can do or what I can't do. I want to challenge you to really think about watching your thinking. Start to observe your little voice talking to you. Remember, we talked about the restrictive voice. And as you start to listen to that voice, start to notice if it's helpful or not. Start to notice if the little voice is telling you things that aren't even true, such as, I'm an overeater. When we state that something is true, we will believe it, and then it stays true. Our brain goes, yep, I'm an overeater. I'm addicted to sugar, and when I start, I can't stop. I always eat when I'm stressed. When we say I always eat when I'm stressed, then when we're stressed, our brain goes, hey, I'm stressed, I better eat, that's what I always do. So we stay stuck in old patterns because we keep repeating those old patterns in our brain. Mindfulness is about noticing these patterns and saying, hey, wait a minute. In the past, I always ate when I was stressed. In the past, I felt like I couldn't stop eating sugar once I started. This is the present. Now, what are my options now? What could I do now? What could I choose? And begin to change those old patterns and create new techniques and skills, which will help you create some new patterns. Meeting your true needs does require time, effort, and energy, which is one of the disadvantages to making it a little more challenging. It may require openness and honesty with yourself and sometimes others, and this can be challenging. It may require the assistance of others to help you work through issues and develop new skills. So I really want to encourage you to think beyond this workshop in terms of getting support. We have definitely discovered sometimes people that come to our workshops might also have some underlying issues with binge eating disorder or depression or something like that. So if you feel like you have deeper issues that you need to deal with, get help with that. You totally deserve it. There are people out there that spend their whole lives getting training in these areas to help people who need additional support and skills. Ask your pastor, find a counselor, get a coach, find somebody who knows more than you do. Don't stay stuck in old patterns. Get some help if you need it. Now, that does not mean that every single thing that drives your desire to eat means you have some deep, dark psychological problem. The truth is, most of us just have old habits. So mindfulness allows us to begin to sort through those habits and start to notice, that's just a habit. What are my options? What can I do instead? What new habits can I create that'll work better for me? It also helps us notice if we have patterns that are really destructive, that are really hurting us, patterns that we maybe don't seem to be able to break out of. This is a chance to observe and decide, I deserve to feel better. I deserve to take care of myself. This is not about the food. This is not about my weight. This is about me choosing to live a bigger life. What do I need to do to build the skills to live that life? And then choosing that. Now we are going to work on a strategy for this. This is a big strategy and it does take time, and I'm going to introduce it today, but we are really going to spend next session really working with this strategy. So don't worry that you have to get it all today or anything. This is going to take a little bit of time, some practice, and sometimes some new skills. But this strategy you can use whenever you feel like eating, but you're not hungry, and you've decided not to eat or to redirect your attention, but you've decided to try to meet your true needs. And it's called FEAST. So what does that stand for? Well, F is for focus, E for explore, A for accept, S is for strategize, and T is for take action. These steps will help you become aware of why you experience the urge to eat and to be able to take small steps toward meeting that underlying need. So let's take a look at each of these steps real quick, and we're going to come back to this next week and really dig a little bit deeper, but let's just get a little familiar with it at this time. Let's start with F, focus. So focus is about getting into the present moment. It's about noticing what is right now. We're not thinking about the past. We're not predicting the future. It's about the present moment. And I want to go through the body, mind, heart scan again with you real quick. So put down whatever you've got, notebook, pen, whatever you have. Settle back in your chair if you can, and close your eyes if you are somewhere that you can for a minute. Take a few deep breaths. Focus inward. Focus your attention inward. I want you to focus on your physical state. Notice your body. Notice the chair you're sitting in. It's been supporting you this whole time, but until now you probably didn't even notice it. You probably weren't aware of it pressing into your legs or against your back. Just notice your body there in the chair. Now focus on your stomach. Are you hungry or full? What's your hunger number? Do you notice any particular areas in your body? Are there any areas of discomfort, or does your body feel pretty good? Now focus on your thoughts. Notice what you're thinking about. Our minds are thinking all the time, or at least mine is. Seems like it's always going a mile a minute. What's going through your mind? Are you distracted? Are you thinking about something else you heard tonight instead of thinking about what I'm talking about right now? Don't worry about what the thoughts are, just observe them. Now focus on your feelings. What emotions are you aware of? Is there any excitement, dread, sadness, fear, happiness? What feelings do you have? The word feelings comes because we often experience emotions in our body. Do you feel anything in your body that might give you a clue about your emotions or how you're feeling? Are your shoulders tense or relaxed? Is your jaw clenched? Or do you feel calm? So feelings are often felt in the physical body. Another thing that will help you identify your physical feelings is to complete the following sentence. I feel blank. Or I am blank. Feelings and thoughts sometimes get a little mixed up. Thoughts are, I need to get everything done tonight so I can get to work early. Or I need to pack my lunch so I'm ready for my day tomorrow. I wonder if I should eat. I wonder if I'm hungry, blah, blah, blah. Thoughts are usually sentences or phrases, whereas feelings are usually described and shortened into a couple of words like, I am tired. I feel angry. I am bored. I feel excited. If you're having a hard time differentiating these, write it down on paper, and this might help you identify if it's a thought or a feeling. Okay, so that's focus. Open your eyes. First, doing a body, mind, heart scan. What's going on in my body? What am I thinking about? What am I feeling? Those three things will really help you clue in to what's happening in the present moment. If this is an area you're having a lot of difficulty, maybe because expressing feelings wasn't allowed or you're uncomfortable for some reason, get help with that. Again, there are people out there that are trained to help you out with this. Now, some other ideas and ways for you to get in touch with what you're thinking and feeling are journaling, or talking it through with a friend or counselor, drawing, scribbling. Notice if any of this gives you any clues. Or maybe imagine someone helping you, like a parent or a trusted friend. Maybe there's a part of you who does this really well for other people, but maybe not for yourself. So for example, maybe the way you parent your children or manage your employees, maybe you can use those skills and tap into them to help yourself. Explore. Once you're aware of the physical sensations, thoughts, and feelings, you can then begin to explore them. Again, no judgment. Your triggers can just be about anything physical, environmental, or emotional. Some are just learned habits, like eating popcorn at the movies. Other triggers are more significant, like an attempt to cope or meet important needs, and they might take a little bit longer to explore, but we'll explore common triggers and strategies for dealing with those in the next workshop. Accept. Be supportive toward yourself. It's all right to feel the way you do. There's no need for thoughts of right or wrong, good or bad, should or shouldn't. Even though eating hasn't been maybe the most effective way for you to cope in the past, it doesn't mean you should feel guilty or ashamed about it. At least you've been coping in some sort of way. Now you have the awareness and the opportunity to choose a more effective way. You'll probably feel more calm and able to cope after this step. Be a problem solver. Come up with as many creative solutions as you can to address that trigger. So, for example, develop a hobby or make new friends, talk to a friend or coworker, buy a book on the subject, talk about your concerns with the person that you might be having issues with directly, or see a counselor. Don't worry about making the right choice. Just come up with as many strategies as you can and make adjustments until you figure out what works for you. Just brainstorm it out. Taking action is about being in charge. Take a step in the direction that you want to go, no matter how small it might seem. Though it is more challenging to go through these steps, it will definitely lead to best, long-term results for you. You will better be able to recognize your needs and meet them more effectively. And you may be surprised at how quickly your urge to eat decreases and how much better you feel overall. So as a quick review, we've got focus, explore, accept, strategize, and take action. So whenever you feel like eating, pause and ask yourself, always, am I hungry? And then if you're not, you're in charge of which road you're going to take. Eat, or meet your needs, or redirect your attention. Weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each option to help you decide what you're going to do. Then choose to take action and see what happens. Make adjustments as you try to see and figure out what works for you. So let's scooch along here. Now we're going to shift gears to another choice we make several times a day: what fluids we consume. This is nourish, drink, and be merry. Speaking of which, I'm going to get a drink. Okay. I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of list of rules to follow about what to drink or anything, so you make your own choices. But that means you'll need to know about your options and how they affect your body. So there are 6 major classes of nutrients: water, carbohydrates, protein, fat, vitamins, and minerals. They all provide different important functions in your body. And we're going to discuss one at each of the next workshops. But for today, we're starting with water. How come? Why are we beginning with water and not with something about food? Well, honestly, water is probably the most overlooked nutrient. Thirst is very frequently, commonly confused with hunger. And since we're still focusing on figuring out hunger to guide our eating, rather than focusing on specific foods, we are going to start with the fluids, talking about water. So keep in mind here, most of you are familiar with some of this information, but your body is like 70% water, which means, I don't know, for the average person, that's like 10 to 15 gallons of water that's in your body. So think about what a gallon looks like, and then 10 or 15 of them. That is a lot of water. Water helps with blood flow, helps with digestion, transporting nutrients. It regulates body temperature. And because these functions are super important, your body works really hard to maintain proper fluid balance. And it works very hard, really super hard, if you don't drink enough. So when you don't drink enough water, your body begins to store extra fluid in your tissues. And then once you start drinking enough, your body will release that extra fluid. So that's why you might lose a lot of, quote, water weight during the first week on a diet that might require you to drink more water, is because you're releasing that extra water that your body's been hanging on to. Now, sadly, but realistically, most people are living in a state of mild dehydration and they just don't even know it. They might experience fatigue and a lack of stamina, but they don't attribute it to the fact that what's going on is their cells are thirsty. Imagine being able to boost your energy level just by increasing your fluid intake. I mean, how easy would that be? So we use something called an all foods fit approach, and you are going to see this, I think, every workshop from here on out. We use the principles of balance, variety, and moderation here. So in this case, how much water do you need? So in the balance here, the rule of thumb in general is like 8 to 12 8-ounce glasses of water. But a better indication, honestly, is the color of your urine. When you are well hydrated, it's like a pale color. Now, obviously, keep in mind that some supplements and some medications might discolor urine, so you do have to keep that in mind if you're taking something. But in general, keep water handy. You won't drink it if it's not easily accessible. I keep my water bottle with me at all times. Sometimes I wind up having 2 with me. Another idea is to mark the halfway point on a 1-gallon jug of water and then keep it in the fridge and try to drink to that half gallon each day. Be aware of salt and caffeine and alcohol, which can definitely affect your fluid balance. Experiment with these and see how they affect you. And of course, you need to drink more during exercise, warm weather, or if you're sick or something. We use the principle of variety. Here with water, although plain water may not be appealing to some people at first, you will eventually develop a taste for it. You'll eventually find that water does really truly satisfy your thirst best out of most options. Most people enjoy their water better when it's cold. I personally enjoy mine better when it's room temperature. So everybody's different. You have to experiment and see what you like best. Dress it up. Use a splash of lime, slice a lemon, put a little spritz of cranberry juice, some cucumber, some mint. You can get creative with it to give it some flavor. You can also get fluid. Remember, it also counts when you get fluid from soups, like broth soups, vegetables, salads, fruits, and veggies have a high content of water in them. Having a clear bowl of broth at the beginning of a meal has definitely been shown to decrease calorie intake during that meal. It's probably because it's taking care of your hydration needs. So moderation, like what foods are you drinking? A lot of us drink a lot of foods and we don't really realize it. So like example, juice smoothies or coffee drinks have tons of calories in them, like almost as much as a serving of food or an entire meal sometimes. So determine if drinking satisfies your hunger as well as actually eating the food. For example, you might find and probably would find that having a glass of water and eating an orange is more satisfying than having a glass of orange juice. So I want you to think about what you can do to improve your quantity or your quality of the fluid you drink this week. So you might, for example, decide that this week maybe you'll increase by 1 or 2 glasses every few days. Maybe you'll keep a full water bottle with you at all times. Watch the calories and some of those other fluids that you might be consuming. Consider that jug idea. Fill a jug with fill a jug, a gallon of water and or a half-gallon jug, and try to drink it by the end of your day. Eat an orange and drink a glass of water instead of having orange juice. See what happens with these options. You might just be surprised. All right. Finally, last section. Now we're at our live section. So this is lay your foundation. So have you ever felt inspired to exercise, eat better, or make other positive changes only to feel your enthusiasm kind of slips away as time passes or slips away when the going gets tough? Although motivation seems a little bit elusive at times, when you understand how to tap into your personal motivators, you're going to feel more in charge of your attitude. And then you'll better know what to do to maintain and try to kind of restore and hang on to that drive and that inspiration that you have in the beginning. This happens for a lot of people. We get all gung-ho and then, I don't know, something happens, right? And we can't hang on to it. So you first need to really clearly identify what your personal reasons are for making a change. Although you might know why you need or want to become more active, it's really important to peel away those layers to make sure you get to the heart of your motivation. Some sources of motivation are internal. Your thoughts or feelings like fear or something like that. Others are external events, people, wedding coming up, situations, rewards that inspire you. But both internal and external motivators can fuel a process of change, especially when you tap into those that create like really strong emotion for you. So think about a change that you really want to make and ask yourself, why do I want to make this change? See, a lot of times we don't ask ourselves these really critical questions. We don't make it about us. We make it about something else that we feel like is telling us we need to do things. So why do you want to make this change? And then why now? And you just keep asking. You keep asking that question and answering that question and asking that question until you feel a strong emotion about something. And those are the powerful motivators that will keep you moving in the right direction. So in order to set powerful goals, you have to do a couple of things. You need to figure out where your starting point is, which means you need to really take an accurate and like detailed assessment of where you are right now relative to the goal that you're trying to achieve. Be realistic. Where are you right now? Consider what your values are. Goals based on your principles really can form a passionate attitude and keep you in there for the long haul. Dream about it. Go for areas that inspire and challenge you. Project yourself into the future. See what that looks like. Write it down. Break your goals into small steps that you're really confident you can achieve. Make sure that you're setting specific exercise goals using the FIT formula. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. Use positive present terms. Make them so clear. I mean, write this down. Make them so clear that you can see them, you can feel them, you can measure them. Set up a plan. Now, you're going to need long-term goals, but you're going to need short-term goals. Throw a timeline on it. Throw a deadline on it. Be flexible and open to new opportunities and paths, but watch out for the detours. And then identify your obstacles and then what those possible solutions might be. We all have them. You've had them in the past. What are some things that have come up before that have derailed you? And what are some things that you could do? Planning in advance for the challenges and obstacles that you might be able to predict is going to make a huge difference in trying to overcome them when they actually crop up. The difference between achieving your goals and not is how you recover from those inevitable challenges. And then assess your progress frequently. Check in often to see how you're doing. What's the progress look like towards your goals? And then adjust your approach as you learn like what works for you. If you're having difficulty reaching a particular goal, maybe break it down into smaller steps. Maybe the goal in that particular step was too much. See if you can break that down further if you need to. Now, as you begin to increase your physical activity or change it up a little bit, your body's going to become more fit, and you might decide to have a more structured program. This is the FIT formula. It is based on these 4 acronyms, which stand for frequency, which is how often are you doing the activity, intensity, which means how much effort are you using during the activity, time, how long do you do the activity, and type. What type of activity are you going to choose from? So for example, we are going to be talking about in our next few workshops, different types of exercise, cardiorespiratory, strength training, and flexibility. We're going to discuss each one in further detail in later workshops, but just so you know, we're going to be applying the FIT principle to all of those. But you can use this to develop and evaluate your own personal plan and then adjust it gradually so that you're getting optimal results that you're looking for. So your action plan for this week is, well, first of all, let's just have a real quick recap. So you have 3 choices when you want to eat but you're not hungry. Remember what they are. You can eat anyway. You can redirect your attention, or you can meet your true needs. You can meet your true needs using the strategy that I introduced tonight: feast, focus, explore, accept, strategize, take action. We briefly talked about ways that you might be able to improve your fluid intake. We talked about you finding your own personal, passionate motivation, and then setting goals based on that, and then using the FIT prescription for your activity levels. So your action plan is going to be, as always, you'll usually see a lot of this, is to take 15 or 30 minutes every day for reading the chapters, journaling, really reflecting on this process and where you are each week, each day, celebrating each little success that you have. You're going to read chapters 3, 11, and 19 in your book. Make your list of things to do besides eat, and then consider making a redirection kit to keep all of those supplies that'll help you out handy. Create food-free zones in your home and at work. And then try to identify at least one need that's been triggering your overeat and take specific steps for meeting that need using the feast strategy so you can be a little more effective. Work on improving your quantity and quality of your food, of the fluids that you're consuming. And then lastly, set at least one powerful goal, at least one, about physical activity or some other aspect of your life. So next workshop, we are going to really begin to dig much deeper into head hunger and talk about a lot of different triggers and strategies for dealing with that. And we're also going to talk about the first type of exercise, cardiorespiratory fitness. And lastly, we're going to unscramble a little bit of the confusion surrounding carbohydrates. So please feel free to reach out to me. You can shoot me an email anytime. I know a lot of you listen to this recording after the fact. So please know that I'm always available if you have any questions. You can visit us on the website. You can look me up. You can shoot me an email. Anyway, until next week, I look forward to talking to you guys then. Take care.